You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. So my guest to look at the issues of the excavators that are missing and the stories that are coming up, very bizarre, murky, on the Galamsey fight, as well as the Airbus scandal. Bobby Banson. He's a lawyer and teaches the law as well. Thank you for joining us, Bobby. Right.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Justice Yankson is General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. He's also a lawyer. And Martin Pebu is a lawyer. And as you know, he filed an RTI request. And it got people to be calling me and asking me to explain further. I didn't understand them. I said, why? It's Martin who has filed an RTI request on behalf of your clients. Why are you calling me?
You're a champion of it. Yeah, you guys fought well over all those years to get it passed.
Right, so. Right. But because of the law, people just have to go ahead and do it by themselves. They don't have to come and worry as lawyers to lead them to do it.
You understand it a lot more. I almost even called you, except that we didn't have time at the time.
Especially in the initial stages.
Yes.
They will need guidance.
Exactly.
Once they
I thought you are training people on the law,
yes,
right?
we have done a couple of things around the country, and I also do it on my show here. Right. So thank you very much. So let's get to Airbus. Meanwhile, this show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of MTN. Everywhere you go, Star Assurance, your solid partner, Bank of Africa, strong as a group, and close as a partner, Amen Scientific. God is the healer. And Duraplus, wherever you go, wherever Duraplus goes, water will flow. So wherever you are, water will come to you because there is Duraplus. Now, as you already know, in the course of this week, two issues have dominated the headlines, but one which appears to be the biggest is about investigations that have led to deferred prosecution agreements in the US, in the UK, in France, and people getting to benefit all over those countries as a result of that, and probes having been triggered in various countries where Airbus is found to have misconducted itself by literally bribing people to get to be able to sell some of its military aircrafts. Ghana was one of them, and a number of issues have come up. Let's quickly listen to the responses that came from persons like VITUS, AZEEM, anti-corruption campaigner, among other parties that felt they are directly involved and needed to react somewhat. And then we'll come back to the studio. My guests will have their take. More importantly, we are asking, when will the special prosecutor remove the veil on government officials, one, and the intermediaries involved?
Well, it's good news that the president has acted so promptly, as we have been calling for him to act in similar cases involving his own officials. But it's interesting. Friday it came out, and Sunday there was this instruction to the Office of Special Prosecutor. It is good news. Let's hope that the Special Prosecutor would take up the challenge and come out with findings that will help us to identify the people involved, find out whether there's any loss to the state, and whether such a loss, if there is, can be recovered, and all that.
You said it sounds interesting that the president immediately referred this to the Office of Special Prosecutor. Are you suggesting then that in other cases of corruption, he could have acted as swiftly?
Yes, I think that's what we normally expect of him as the president that has promised to curb corruption. So every other thing, if he does that, it will be very nice.
Which other cases of corruption do you feel that he didn't act as quickly as he should?
Oh, but a lot of them people have to put pressure on him before he comes out, and even when the report comes out, it's not made public, and all that. You and I, these are things that are in the public domain. let's say the Australia visa saga, let's say the Boss case, the Ghana maritime case. It takes some time before he decides that an investigation should be conducted. So it's not a new thing.
That Mr. Martin Amidu himself is quite conflicted because, I say so because between 2009 till January 2012, Mr. Martin Amidu was part of that government. And in fact, at some point between January 2010 and January 2011, Mr. Martin Amidu was our Minister for the Interior. And by our constitution, he served on the Council of the Ghana Armed Forces. So it will be interesting to find out, does he know about it? I mean, in terms of the procurement, I'm talking about 2010. And before the 2010, if I'm right, I think he served as an advisor in the office of the president.
Right.
So what does he know about it? And then after leaving as Minister for Interior, he became the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. I think in government contracts and in big government procurement involving international bodies, certainly the Attorney General must have some knowledge. And so I based on these, I would say that perhaps Martin himself is conflicted in this matter until perhaps he makes it clear that yes, he was in government at the time, held key positions, including being on the Ghana Armed Forces Council, but was not privy to a decision to acquire aircraft for our military. And I think that we need to push that angle for Martin to be clear on that, so that he doesn't commence an investigation that on a matter that he ought to have known or ought to have been privy to, and bring us conclusions that maybe people would not be clear about how it was conducted and whether his interest played a role in one way or the other.
The suspicion now in 2011 away a whole press conference. Now free say it was the sitting president then, John Mahama. No, so our suspicion and it's a sign. You still think say it's him?
Well, say Yabudi is a elected government official.
Yes. So,
in my own estimation, it confirms don't forget, President Mahama. Because he was the luckiest vice president about those things that on the president money. Because the STS arrangement to grab me. Or Kase Yanko Korea, Yanko. What I say? STS say, minute Nakoe, Nakutu. Yakono. Agreement na Amade Emami, the draft agreement. Nay, Bisipasapa. To be fair, because I'm sorry, I couldn't quite name him at the Crocray airport. I don't know who's over STS at the end. I'm going to say, wouldn't him? I don't know. And also, I must say, President Kujano, Vice President in Kujana baby. So, Yako Korea, Media, Nevena, Mimose, I didn't go, Papa.
All right. So, you heard the majority leader in Parliament, who was then minority leader at the time this business came up in Parliament. But you heard also Suleimana Brahima, who says that it is not difficult at all to be able to project and tell exactly who individual government official one is, among others. And you heard VITUS AZEEM also thanking the president for being that swift, really very swift in asking the special prosecutor to get into the matter. He wishes and prays that that will be the template for all other matters that come up. So, Bobby, I'm sure that you have gone over these processes from the UK and from the US. And I was just telling Justice YANSKON a while ago that, and Martin KPEBU, that I was attempting a summary that would be so crisp that I can share with the public. And by the time I realized, I have 5 pages. 5 pages, and that doesn't seem enough. From your reading of these particular 2 deferred judgments that we are become familiar with, what sticks out for you?
Well, I took more time to read the U.S. judgment because I felt it was more detailed than the SADC District Court.
It's a bit straightforward, too.
Yeah, straightforward. Let me put it that way. So from my understanding of it, it states that it started from 2009.
When the UK says intermediary 5 is a close relative, they will say it's a brother of government official 1.
So they were very
they're quite
straightforward.
Straight to the point.
And they stated, it came out clearly that the initial contact was with government official 1 and Airbus. Yes. They stated very clearly. And they said that the government official 1 is a person known to the US state. So let's it not be as if somebody brought the deal to government official 1, whoever it is. He was the direct contact right from the onset with Airbus. Now, my brief summary of the sequence of events, if I may call it that way, was that government official 1 starts dealing directly with Airbus officials about the possibility of Ghana government purchasing these military aircrafts. Somewhere along the
right upon assumption of office.
A few months. Is it a few months?
A few days. Because I said January.
2009.
So December. Okay,
2 days week.
January 7 and then okay. So somewhere along the line, government official 1 says, okay, I cannot directly deal with this. I'll give you somebody who would be the go-to or go-between us. Now, this person is described as a brother of government official 1. I think he's described as individual 5 in the U.S. report.
That's right.
But intermediary 5 in the
UK.
For the purpose of our discussion, I'll call the person number 5.
Yes.
That's
okay. Easier.
That's easier, number 5. So number 5 goes to incorporate a company, the purpose of which would serve as an agency. Let me use layman's language.
Right.
That would sign an agreement with Airbus to procure a business contract for Airbus in Ghana on commission basis. Airbus, because of its seat of incorporation in UK, Germany, France, they would have to comply with this OECD convention on bribery and corruption, anti-bribery, anti-corruption.
Right.
By that, you must submit all your agreements to these internal checks. Now, the commission agreement, I think it was 5%, somewhere along the line.
Yeah, it's required to be 5.
Yes. Yes. And so you must submit it to your internal checks. The internal checks says, bring me the incorporation document of this agency, the company. Then they realize that the shareholder or directors are closely related to government elected officials who are in high place positions. They said no.
And included number 5.
Yes. So number 5 is a shareholder of this company.
Yeah.
They said no, you cannot have this transaction with this company as an agent because then you will not meet that test. They said, okay, wait. We have a Spanish company that can be a small screen. Let us use that Spanish company as an agent. But the commission will end up in the hands of these intermediary 5, and by extension, government official 1. So for me, that is how this went around.
Okay.
So the transaction was done, and the American judgment states categorically was that the purpose was to influence the decision-making process. And so there is no doubt about it, that it was an attempt to pay money to secure a contract which may ordinarily have not been secured, but for this payment of money. So it was to induce the contract,
right,
the execution of the contract. So clearly, if not that there was a crime, there was an attempt at a crime, which is equally punishable under our laws.
Right.
Clearly. Now, if we, as to who government official 1 is, it's up in the air. We cannot seem to, but the interesting thing is that I was discussing with a senior.
It's up in the air as in you know, but in your head. You can
That
say
is what I'm saying. Because these are, if you are not careful, you may go into the realm of defamation. if it turns out that the person you suspect and you come out to say, as for politicians, on their political platforms, they are allowed to say whoever they think it is, and they may, walk away and bring up. But with us as professionals, you cannot sit on a platform like yours and say categorically that I know it is this person. Remember, the circumstantial evidence rule is that the facts must lead to one and only one irresistible conclusion.
And even if it did, you still can't.
That is what I'm saying. But even in the contest, we did not have only one government official.
But let's be careful before you suggest that politicians are immune from civil suits by way of defamation if they defame somebody.
But when they are sued, they find a way of having it. Say, it's said on a political platform. They find a way of having it sorted anyway.
But that's not a defense.
It's not a defense.
Okay.
We will not take that risk. We will not take that risk. Because you cannot say that between 2009 and 2015, we had only one government official elected, highly placed, who had a brother who is a UK citizen. We cannot make that conclusive. I mean, you can guess, but you cannot say it unless the investigators have come out to say, this is the person we were referring to. So we will leave it as it is.
Do I hear you say that you have your doubts as to who these individuals are, particularly government official 1 and intermediary 5?
Something, if they are found, or before it's concluded that, okay, if they are found that they have been involved in this, whoever it is, it will be a criminal offense.
Right.
And the standard of proving criminal offense is beyond all reasonable doubt. As it stands now, I would have doubt. Like I said, the basis of my doubt would be that we did not have only one elected government official. We had several of them. And I will not say that it was only one who had a brother who was of UK nationality. I will not. I'm sure if we dig, we would have like 5 or 6. So as it stands now.
Are you sure about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can have. I just will not be pushed to that and say it is only one person. Now, the interesting aspect for me is whether or not we have enough basis, instead of reinventing the wheel, doing the investigations from scratch, approaching the United States, United Kingdom and France to say, give us what you have. That would be the basis of prima facie case.
Okay.
Invite these people, because I'm sure that because these investigations have been ongoing for 4 years. And so before they came out with this, it means that they would have confronted Airbus officials and said, we have this evidence. They could not have denied it.
All right.
I'm sure there will be exchange of written communication, evidence of payment transfers, all of that, which have not been put in the judgment.
Of course, they speak about intermediary 5 being put on email correspondences to which government official 1 was also aware as far as the transaction or the correspondence between Airbus officials and these 2 individuals were concerned.
So these people would have.
So they have them.
They have them.
Yes, because if you look, they talk about the body of evidence that they have gone through, which is in the millions. About 30 million. Yeah, 30 million.
That instead of us reinventing.
But that's a lot of work.
It is.
They have to comb through 30 million plus of documentation.
Search. You can do a digital search.
Okay. The judge actually spoke about it, how they had to work it around.
We should be getting there.
So if, and I was discussing with Senior Table, this OECD Convention on Anti-Bribery and Corruption, which gives the countries that are signatory to it the opportunity to share such information. Ghana is not a signatory.
Okay.
If we were, we could have taken advantage of it and said, you are investigating public officials in this country, because under Criminal Act, if you're a public official, whether you commit, government official, whether you commit the offense in Ghana or outside Ghana, you are subject to prosecution within, the jurisdiction of Ghana. So they could have approached these countries and said, give us that information. But as it stands now, I'm thinking through the legal basis that we can ask, apart from diplomatic committee between countries.
Hold it on there. Let me go to Martin on that and find out whether in this specific area, before you go to your understanding of the facts too, is it really a difficulty, and how does our as it were, legal assistance framework come in?
Yes, perfect. So we have a law, thankfully, on this subject, the Mutual Legal Assistance Act. Yes, so under it, the government can request for assistance from the UK authorities, and they would readily furnish. And in actual fact, even before this particular one, under the Evidence Act, previously, you remember the case of Apia versus the Republic? Yes, even that one, we did it under the Criminal Offences Act. And the UK, this in Barclays Bank, were required. That's Apia was a former special prosecutor, and he was alleged to have taken money. Yeah, the Barclays Bank had to bring the evidence out. So as for us getting evidence from the UK authorities, it's not much. I'm talking about US, and it would apply to the US.
So what you mean then is that it's only a matter of time.
Excellent.
The special prosecutor has a basis, a legal basis, by which he can be furnished with the information. Because the information that the judge was privy to has the names. It is what has been put out that the laws in that country prohibits them from putting out the names.
Excellent.
Okay.
Yes. So Sam, and that is where I think that maybe we should spend more time. So far, you see that we've been interested in the conspiracy theories far more than reaching out to Mr. Amidu to find out what he's doing. Because, you know, so far, Mr. Amidu's this is support and the euphoria we all had on his appointment has fast dwindled. So this one is a make or break for him, please. So I think that we should rather throw the searchlight on help that Mr. Amidu needs to be able to finish this investigation quickly, because people's reputation is at stake. And also, even apart from that, as Ghanaians, we are also curious. You know, now that, you know, the conspiracies are all over, Official 1, Intermediary 5, and all that. So I think we should spend more time, you know, because since Mr. Amidu took office, you know, he's had some time. I certainly respect, you may say it's not that much, but at least by this time, apart from Mama Yarga's botched trial, we haven't seen much. So let's ask him, what does he need? The last time I knew, they were giving him a 9-story building, right? He's had the legislation for the subsidiary legislation, LI, for his employees and all. What else? You see, so that let's throw the searchlight. Let your reporters go. Has he received a letter from the presidency? Has he already written to the UK authorities? First one to the Mutual Legal Assistance Act. And even, as I said, even before it, we had the Evidence Act and then the Act 30. They did appear under Act 30 and all that. So that we would quicken up, because I see that we are all very anxious to find out who these persons are, you know. So that is what I make of it.
What is your summary of the facts? And I'm doing this deliberately so you project your summaries for our audiences to hear them from you at first hand. What you also say about this whole thing.
Yes, so what is salient from what I gathered from the Southwark this judgment, Dame Victoria Sharp. She says that, well, from all the evidence that she had.
And this on the 28th of January.
Yes.
Yes. Before the 28th, about 2-3 days earlier, the judge had heard them in private that they intended to have a deferred judgment because they were seeking to have a settlement.
Excellent.
Right. And then on this day, the 28th, then they go in open court. And then because the rules compel the judge to come to open court and to say what has been arrived at, but without disclosing the identities of the people. And he gives a number of reasons, including that it is not to prejudice because there are ongoing criminal processes and investigations in the countries affected, including countries where the death penalty is what you will suffer for engaging in that kind of corrupt act. So it's not fair to, you might get someone killed before they know it.
Exactly, even before they get the opportunity to defend themselves. Yes, okay, and the judgment itself is dated 31st January 2020. Right, so says that, to cut to the chase, that intermediary 5, was the agent, having applied and be approved and all that. But when the process went through to the Airbus compliance unit, they saw that no, intermediary 5 is close to official 1, government official 1. So they couldn't deal with it.
The business partner.
Yes, it was certainly going to be a breach of their ethics rules and all that. So then they got a Spanish subsidiary of Airbus, okay? They would do the transaction. And then they also had an agent, more specifically, an agent who had been approved, who had passed the due diligence test, but had never done work in Ghana. You see it? Had never done work in Ghana, but had passed the subsidiary and was within this area. So they said, okay, let's allow intermediary 8 to do the work, okay? So he would formally be on it, but we all know that intermediary 5 will continue to play his role, okay? Yes, and then the Spanish subsidiary signed the agreement with the government of Ghana. So it wasn't the parent company Airbus that signed. Good. Now, in this, even though the payments, they were supposed to, the OECD, the limit of 5 million was supposed to be observed, 5%, sorry.
5%.
5%. So mean that don't pay more than 5% to an agent.
As commission. As
commission to an agent. Eventually, they paid more than. So they said they paid intermediary 5 about 3.5 million euros. 3.5 million euros.
Out of which the subsidiary, you know, Spanish company withheld what will be its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost close to 200,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. So a larger chunk of it went to intermediary 5's company. That's company D. And you know, subsequently, intermediary 5 and his company even came for more. They said they were owed another 1.5 million. But that was when the plugs were pulled. So that payment wasn't made, because by then, you know, Airbus had been trying to, one of the subsidiaries had been trying to seek funding from the UK Export Finance. And as part of that, they had to do due diligence. And you know, that was actually the basis, that was the genesis of the whole thing. It was that due diligence they were trying to scale, which annexed these things, because the UK Export Finance, when they saw it, they told Airbus that, look, no. We've seen these suspicious acts of corruption, and we are obliged to report, okay, to the SFO. Right. And then they pulled Airbus along. You say, so for us, to the extent that 3.5 million euros was paid, okay, as a result of the Ghanaian transaction, it means that we as Ghanaians, as a state, we are affected. Because number one, the business was secured, because the payments were made, they say in July 2011, okay, that was where the first payment was made. So they say between July 2011 and sometime in 2015, various payments were made. And we're holding Airbus for failing to prevent persons close to them from making the payments, these payments in breach of the laws, okay? Right. So looking at it, it means that definitely as a state, since we've been caught in this web, we are interested in finding out, apart from the identities of the intermediary 5 and also official 1, the question we should be, and I'm sure Mr. Amidu will be looking at, is that as a result of these bribery payments, did we pay more than we should have paid for the aircraft? That's very, very critical for us. Do we pay more than we should ordinarily have paid for the aircraft?
The suggestion by Chairman Sabonsu is that it would have been inflated by up to $10 million each.
I heard it. You know, where we are now, naturally, I mean, I'll be very dishonest if I didn't say that I also have suspicions that there will be inflations. But as we've already stated, what we are expecting is that Mr. Amidu would uncover. If Mr. Amidu doesn't have expertise on...
But is that logical, or it is not?
It is.
That Airbus will not be selling to you and make a loss.
Excellent.
So what they would have to give to you, if it is more than the 5% that they are supposed to do, they would include it in the price.
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. So it's logical to
like the proverbial 10% that contractors are said to get when they get their contracts. So if the price of the contract is supposed, in fact, is supposed to be, say, 5 million, and the politician who is leading to give you the contract needs you to give him some 2 million, they will add it to it, and it will become 7 million.
Yes, inflated, grossly inflated. You know, the 10% didn't start today. You know, Kwame Nkrumah's time, the 10% was actually being taken to fund the CPP.
Okay.
It was official, close official policy. Okay, secret though. Okay. It was after his overthrow that all these things came out. Right?
So,
yes.
So we'll pursue how Ghana should also begin to do things, because we look at what is happening across the globe where particular countries have been involved. And in Sri Lanka, the news is out that the Airbus, chief who was at the helm at the time already has been picked up. So just as briefly, how do you also summarize your understanding of the documents that you have been reading?
Okay. Looking at the two judgments, it is very clear that as far as those courts are concerned, or those investigative bodies are concerned,
right,
they are talking about bribery and corruption.
That's right.
It is not just, in quote, commissions paid to people. And the charges that were preferred against those involved, Airbus, i.e. Airbus, and then the counts that were given. If you look at the British one, for example, it was premised on Section 7 of the Bribery Act 2010.
Right.
So clearly here we are talking about bribery as far as this investigation.
And that specifically is failure of a commercial organization to prevent bribery.
Yes.
So Airbus was on the hot seat because it failed to prevent bribery.
And that, in that respect, technically breaches the law, as we are saying, Section 7. The OECD bits were also in there as well. And Airbus has accepted that, yes, we have broken these things.
Right.
The rules are spelled out. So technically, they have accepted that they have engaged in bribery. And that is why they've entered into the DPA. Now, the DPA, the Deferred Prosecution Agreement, is a creature of law. And it is meant for organizations only, both incorporated and unincorporated. It does not involve individuals, or it does not cover individuals. So if you read the judgments carefully, you realize that the judges are saying that, for example, names of individuals were not disclosed because further investigations are currently ongoing in respect of individuals. So these individuals, both in the jurisdiction of the UK and abroad, and that could even involve our own government official one. It's possible because they said for the individuals it is still ongoing, and the court said the judge is privy to the names and identities of all individuals or all suspects. But for the purposes of the judgment and the DPA, she will not mention the names because, one, that will prejudice potential criminal proceedings going forward.
Okay.
So it's possible that those in the UK and those outside, depending on how these countries take the processes going forward, beyond the Airbus bit,
right,
these people will also be subject to further criminal prosecutions.
All right. Interesting. But so, Bobby, what's your understanding from reading from the UK's decision? The Deferred Prosecution Agreement, DPA, is clearly a vehicle for which those who have agreed that they are guilty and are going to pay the $3 billion, they have 30 days to make good of that. Does it mean that by 30 days, if they don't fulfill the terms from your reading of the judgment, it means that there could actually be a prosecution?
Yeah, I think that was my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Right.
In some instances too, they had 3 months. I mean, for various thresholds.
Right.
They, for example, they asked for a change of their structure, and I read on the Airbus website that they had actually started that process of restructuring their agency relationships and all of that. So definitely, if they do not fulfill those requirements within those days, then of course those who are responsible will be taken to the full prosecution will go on. But for them to sign this, it means that you have admitted to your guilt.
Right.
And so it will be a matter of sentencing, I suppose. And that is something that perhaps in our criminal jurisprudence, we may also look at adopting in situations that are very ripe for such kind of
why don't we have already Section 35 of the Courts Act, where you do what is, we have now decided to name clearly in the OSP Act as plea bargain?
Yes.
Does it not look like that?
No, but
where you go, you say, I'm guilty, I'll pay back, and then I'll pay restoration or whatever it is, but they'll convict you, but you don't go to jail.
Yes, but this, I think, is on quite a different scale.
Right.
Need more detailed guidelines.
Guidelines, like the way it's been set out. So, for instance, without any form of prejudice, in some of the charges that have been laid against people who were involved in this banking crisis,
Right.
if in the event that they are found guilty, you know, that is very detailed. And at the end of the day, it's the government of Ghana and the taxpayers' money that has gone down the drain in such huge volumes. So there could be that sort of arrangement, that kind of thing. And it's very interesting how they've decided to go about it. At the end of the day, you will notice, and maybe this could be discussed later, that the three countries, I don't know whether it's the three countries that are entitled to the 3 billion euros compensation. And I was discussing with Senior KPEBU that none of these countries suffered financially for what has gone on. Okay. It was a breach of their laws, but they did not suffer financial loss.
Right.
The Sri Lanka, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Ghana, we have suffered financial loss. And yet we are sitting down not finding ways and means of getting any form of compensation.
How can we get any of the compensation? For example, if perhaps the OECD rules, we have not signed onto them, do you know?
No, we have not signed.
We have not signed.
We have not signed.
So we can't get the compensation.
No, but you see, in Nigeria, there are prosecutions against Shell in Holland to compensate the Nigerian government for some of these bribery and New York that they did there. So we are discussing that it's possible that government can task some lawyers to pursue this agenda. Because
a lot of thoughts.
Yes, if it is obvious that the Ghana government has, and I think Sri Lanka you mentioned, they have actually made a formal, communicated their intention to be compensated. Because if indeed the price of these aircrafts were ballooned to accommodate these commissions that were paid, it means that Ghana did not get value. And Airbus should compensate the country
these are
of
aircraft that we actually bought with loans.
And Doc was explaining to me how we ended up paying the loans. Monies that should have gone to our military men have ended up in people's pocket. I mean, allegedly.
Something, just to add a little to that bit. You see, Bobby, it's not that these countries did not suffer financial loss. They also did. They did through the resources they spent
in investigating.
Yeah, right. And then Airbus is also owned by more or less the EU. More or less. It's a public entity within the EU. The states have some shares in there. So depending on how much they pay out, it could also affect potential dividends to be paid.
Okay, let me add. Okay. But in the judgment, the investigation, the UK one, they said about £7 million. So that's small. No, so Bobby's point is so they should deduct their £7 million.
Yes. But you see, you should also understand that there was a certain principle in there that this was to be a punitive measure to serve as a deterrent for other organizations going forward. And that even within the DPA arrangement, they have structured this way such that those who on their own know that they have committed similar offenses can come forward and, in quotes, they will be sorted out. Now, just to take us back a bit, you know, when we spoke earlier, a few minutes ago, about the fact that the activities were of a nature that more or less was planned, okay. We were trying to, not that we, the courts were trying to say that, look, these DPAs are not just done for the purposes of plea bargaining or anything.
That's right.
But there are some principles that underlie. And one is public interest,
that's right,
fairness and justice. So if we try as a country to even use our laws, we may have to improve on some of the, you know, wordings in there to capture some of these things. So that you don't necessarily just go to plea bargain just to be set free, but you'll be subjected to certain principles that will show that, indeed, if we give you that leeway through a DPA, that decision to use those DPA arrangements will be in the interest of the public. There will be fairness and will also serve the purpose of justice.
Interest of justice, fair, reasonable, and proportionate.
Yes.
And that's the test that was used. And again, they said that they also have to look at your track record. How often have you been doing this thing?
Yes.
And what measures have you put in place? And they had checked and realized that Airbus had commenced various processes to remedy and to, in future, prevent these bribes from being given.
And then there was also a purposive bit where they spoke about the fact that the company was employing a huge number of people. It was not really part of the principles, but you can deduce that all those considerations.
Yes.
So that whole activity of ensuring that these things actually protect the state and the people within were in there.
Yes.
But the last thing I'm going to add is that, unfortunately, with these funds, unless maybe these countries decide to give us maybe a grant on their own volition, we will never be able to get part of this, because in the UK, for instance, the judge says that money was to be paid into the consolidated fund. And once it goes into a consolidated fund, it is public funds that people of Ghana, technically speaking, cannot access.
It doesn't belong to them. It doesn't make it right.
No, hold on.
But
I don't think that we should necessarily go for part of that 3 billion.
Yes.
We should take our
own independent action.
We should take our independent action.
We have been wrong in a way. We should take our own independent action. But for this particular money.
But they have noted that for a long time, there's not been such payment to this level, this amount of money.
So this was why they were saying it is punitive.
So if you are going for a separate and extra compensation, what do you think will be the attitude of the courts when they have clearly said that this is like historic? Nobody has paid so much.
Yes, but at the end of the day, we as a country, we have lost. Should they go scot-free?
No, that's why they have paid 3 billion.
No. But the other thing is that if you understand, the courts are saying that the offenses committed by Airbus were grave.
Right.
So it is not just about the quantum. They were looking at the magnitude or the seriousness of the offenses. And the bigger the offense, the more likely that you are going to get a bigger punishment by way of what you have to pay. And they're also looking at Airbus as an entity, how much they make on a yearly basis, the worth of the company, and what this punishment in quote will do to them. If you give them
let's continue from this point on. What do you make of the president's direction to the OSP, and what are your expectations?
Well, I think that is a very right call. You see, as a country, we cannot continue to sit aloof when issues of national and international importance come to the fore. If you look at the transactions as have happened and the judgment, Ghana's name features in there. Count 5 is all about Ghana.
That's right.
And not just Ghana, but the government of Ghana itself is involved. So the state, technically speaking, is involved. And I think the right call is what the president has put out there. Now, for the OSP, I think this is a very good opportunity for them to do a good job for the people of Ghana, for all of us to have confidence in them, that irrespective of whoever is involved, whether it's a government official or an individual Ghanaian citizen or whatever, they will always be there to do what is right. We can take a cue from what is happening in the other countries. The whole scheme or the whole arrangement was basically about the same for all the countries involved, the structure. And others have been very proactive. They have started their investigations. Some have even arrested some people and all that. So I think that the OSP should ensure that within their processes, these things are done swiftly, and some conclusion is brought to the fore for the people of Ghana to see that indeed that office is working.
So Bobby had said earlier that the questioning of, say, government official 1 and intermediary 5 may be a difficult one because there could be several government officials who you could also trace to have relations or brothers outside of this country and in Britain. Is he right about that? And perhaps, may I say, is he not wrong because they speak to one particular individual throughout the transaction as government official 1, and not that there was a termination at one point and somebody comes over and that person is still described as government official 1.
I mean, both of you are right. You see, when you start from Bobby's end, he is looking at it that you are in a maze, and you have to find your way out. So to start off with, you have a situation where you could have maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 people who may fit that description. That is what he was trying to say.
How is that possible?
No, wait, no.
Until we are giving the name.
Until you have the name. You see, the way the society is structured, especially between Ghana and the UK, there are a lot of people in Ghana who may have brothers and sisters in the UK because of the traditional ties. That is, like I said, when you start off in a maze. But it is simple because the judgment itself tells us that, look, the individuals or the persons involved are known. So we can actually request for their names through the proper legal structure. The OSP can help all of us. He also, Bobby took the position that, look, for us as professionals, we wouldn't want to join the bandwagon and, just spill things out there. But I'm sure individually, we may all have
our own inclination
as to who.
My question is there a logic to suggest otherwise, that government official 1 is one individual from the start to the end?
It is one individual.
I agree that
it is one
individual.
Look,
It is one individual.
The whole judgment gives us a lot of pointers. It talks about the point at which the person assumed office.
Right.
The fact that the person is still living, or at least up to the end of 2016, when the person exited, the person was still alive, and what have you. So clearly, we can narrow it down to the people who were in government at the time. And it tells us that they were elected officials. So it is so clear.
Elected official.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, elected officials, sorry. It is one person. And he actually even started the phone calls to Airbus or made the contact. So there is no doubt.
Right upon assumption of office.
Yeah, so there's no doubt about it.
2009.
Yes. In fact, if you want to narrow it, you can take out the previous government out. All those who started from that point, you know them. We know who belongs to where, who is a key decision maker, or who potentially could be a key decision maker. So, like I said, in our own individual closets, I'm sure we all have a fair idea who that person could be. But we are injuncted by the fact that we are professionals, and the fact that we also don't want to prejudice further activities as stated by the judge in the judgment. But the state can easily get access to those records, as we have all discussed here.
Can individual 5, intermediary 5, who is individual 5?
Yes.
In the American judgment, who in the UK judgment is a close relative, and in the American judgment is a brother to government official 1. Can he change at any point from the start to the end of the transaction?
He cannot change because the records are there. Look, you were told that even the
I'm asking so because he had suggested earlier that there could be several other
options. I think he was talking about options.
I didn't say that there would be a
let's say if it is you and your brother, you are one option.
Yes.
Right. If it is Bobby and his brother or myself, yes. But once we zoom in on that option, you were together throughout the process.
Maybe you should play back, because we are constrained. Maybe play back Suleiman Abraham's conspiracy theory. Because you see that for the lay listeners, usually they don't have patience for these legal rules and the same. So maybe Suleiman Abraham's conspiracy, the way he has explained it, perhaps satisfied, because you see that he tries to show that at one point it was General Smith who was in office as defense minister. He doesn't have a brother in the UK. He did some elimination. Well, if you call it rough tactics or something. Yes, so you see, he did it and then arrived at a certain conclusion. Yes, we as professionals can't be categorical, but lay people, if they want to, except that we'll plead.
Okay, Sule says he arrived at a certain projection.
Yes.
Not a conclusion.
Yeah, excellent.
He said a logical projection.
So you see why from the beginning I said that we missed it when so far we have not thrown the searchlight on Mr. Amidu. That is where, because you can see we are all yearning to arrive at the answer, right? So that's where we should then go to Mr. Amidu and find out. Look, this is his letter is even going to post to the UK. What, is it going to be ordinary mail or is it going to be DHL?
Or is the letter there already?
Exactly. So that is where, and every day we should be getting updates, because even so far, though under his act, he's supposed to give us updates of cases like that twice a year. I don't know, you may correct me. So far, I haven't read an official one.
There was a
the last one, it was a leak.
Yeah.
It It was a leak. So where is Mr. Hamidu? It's there in the act, patently. I left mine in the car.
You're right.
It's there that he should give an update twice a year, right? So let's see. So far, we are not getting
recently.
Do you think he has a difficult task with this one?
But the media.
Do you think he has a difficult task with this one?
Well, it could be difficult, but not surmountable. Because, look, difficult in the sense that now you have to go out of the jurisdiction to try and unearth certain things. But looking at the way states work, and looking at the way the graft agencies also work.
A bribery offense where you had evidence in documents of over 30
million.
But
he would need to get
he
those.
Still will have a difficult task?
No. What I'm saying is that difficult in the sense that now he has to go out of the jurisdiction to go and get the entirety of the evidence and, get further
and by your suggestions, using the mutual legal assistance law,
he can get it.
It is easier
for
to
him
get
to get
that.
it. Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I'm sure that if he goes to them in 1 or 2 sittings, they can deliver as much as he wants to them. So,
what will he do with what he gets if he applied for the evidence and they gave him the evidence and the names of the people involved?
Then he will call them. So he's naturally going to build on that. Because remember, in the judgment, the judge said that the scheme was elaborate and complex. So it's no child's play. So it means that Mr. Hamidu has a lot of work already done for him. So he's naturally expected to build on that, okay? Yes, so when he gets them, and then the judge says she has the names, right? So those names will be disclosed, the Ghanaian ones. Then Mr. Hamidu will call them.
What will he do with them? Just call them?
Yeah.
He's supposed to take them through our legal processes.
It's Martin's.
Okay, yes. So under the act, but he's going to investigate them. So he's going to invite them. Okay, maybe the word call, right? Yes, so whichever way, bottom line, he has to engage them.
In Sri Lanka, they are being arrested. They are not being called.
Sam, good that you mentioned this arrest. I think Ghanaians, we are too fixated with the word arrest. We are often interested in arrest. Meanwhile, we don't speed up the trial itself. We are, as soon as they say somebody's done anything wrong, has he been arrested? What does an arrest do? Look, you can arrest him, keep him in jail for 100 years. You've not convicted him. But in any event, then you would have abused his rights. So it's even good if repeated. I think we should stop this matter of arrest. Let's get into investigate. So you invite him, grant him bail, and then go into the matter. Be interested
What are the potential offenses here? That's what I'm looking at. You call them and say, what have you done? I have seen emails that Kofi Menu took the money and brought it to you. And whose money is it?
Okay, Sam,
is
it's not my question.
Is it your money?
Yes, it's your question. In the judgment, he says that the payments were made to induce, okay, or get improper this in favor. Yes, there's some words that were used. Oh dear. So it means that
retain business or advantage.
And then there's another part that said that government official one would then behave improperly. There's improper behavior. So that's the corruption bit. So under Section 239 of Act 29, the Criminal Offences Act, you influence a government official to behave otherwise than he's supposed to officially do so that you gain an advantage. It's corruption, okay? And even the private person who pays the money, under the Coursing Financial Law, Section 179 C. Okay. If a private person pays money to a government official for him to benefit, I mean, it's also
abuse of office for private gain.
Excellent.
That's it.
So let's read it out. 179 C. Sometimes it helps. Okay, I'm there. It says that a person commits a criminal offense who, A, while holding a public office, corruptly or dishonestly abuses the office for private profit or benefit, or B, not being a holder of a public office, acts or is found to have acted in collaboration with a person holding a public office for the latter to corruptly or dishonestly abuse the public office for private profit or benefit.
So you don't have to be in public office only to be held by it.
Excellent.
And if you are not in public office but you helped, like
excellent.
He says.
And even there's a Supreme Court decision on it. This maybe Johnson, I think the former National Security Coordinator went to court. And the Supreme Court said, no. If Siraj is investigating. The fact that you were not a public official at the time is no answer. So even apart from the express provision, there's a Supreme Court decision. Once it's corruption, please, private or at least to the extent that you helped, then that one, the law would catch you. Okay.
I see.
Yes. So to the extent that the UK judgment, the judges listened to the evidence and made a finding that the payments were made to not just as for getting business is legal, but it says to ensure improper behavior. I think let's move on. I'll get that. Right. Excellent. Let's read it. Just 1 minute. Let's read it. It says that, look, false documentation. So paragraph 53 says false documentation was created by or with the agreement of Airbus employees in order to support and disguise these payments. The payments were intended to induce or reward improper favor by government official one towards Airbus. You say it? Yes, improper favor.
So if you can conclude yours there with me, for me on this. If the Ghanaian state, authorities pursuit will be under the law you refer to. So potentially, what are they looking at? To collect the money or to put you in jail, and to put you in jail for how long if you are found guilty?
Excellent. So number one, we naturally are interested in the money, collect the money. Thankfully, Mr. Amidu's Act allows for the person to give, and less of a jail sentence. But let's say, to answer your law, legally, they say from 250 penalty units upwards. A penalty unit is still 12 cedis.
Yes, 12 cedis.
So from 250, so you multiply minimum of 250 upwards and up to a maximum jail term of 10 years. Yeah, so the D, let me read it out. It says, D, a person convicted of a criminal offense specified in this chapter is liable to a fine of not less than 250 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 10 years, or to both the fine and the imprisonment. But you see, like I keep saying, we should de-emphasize long jail terms. Let's be interested in the money. We don't do well at recovering the state funds, okay? So let's rather, when Mr. Amidu gets in there, we should be interested in disgorging the money so that we get it back. We can build hospitals, schools, and all that with it. If the man is in custody, don't forget, of course, he will suffer so much.
But if a government official and his brother were involved in such a huge scheme of bribery and corruption, shouldn't we be looking at something higher than this rather than, what is it, 3,000 Ghana cedis?
It's a minimum. So
minimum. Okay.
So it could go up.
So it could go up.
Don't forget, there's the
apart from collecting the money. Okay, the minimum you could get is 3,000 Ghana cedis, or go to jail for 10 years.
Or both.
Or both.
Hey, Sam, let's not underestimate the conditions in Nsawam. You know, currently they are fed of 1 cedi 80 pesos a day. It's terribly bad. The overcrowdedness. Don't even forget, let's even start the naming and shaming. You know, even this discussion.
The judge spoke about the fact that in some other countries, the people will stand trial and they are likely to suffer death.
Yes. Sam, look, in China, they execute people for corruption. Has it stopped? Has it stopped? It hasn't. Ghana, we used to execute people for armed robbery. Has it stopped? No. So that's why I said, look, let's de-emphasize lengthy jail terms and rather concentrate on getting all the money back first. So after we've recovered all the money, then let's make this point. You know, people have been saying in the social media that there is no evidence of payment to official one. Please, we have jurisprudence on these things. If only it is found that the payments were made to intermediary 5 for the benefit of official one, there are decided cases. You will find Republic versus Hagan, previous ministers, Republic versus Nkumsa. The payments were never made directly to the ministers. Yet, Azukrab J said that no, he finds that there was corruption. And so Nkumsa, who was a deputy speaker of parliament in those days, was found guilty. And the payments were all made to the Minister of Trade at the time. You say it.
Yeah,
so there is a lot of jurisprudence.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
You see, on this business of, in quotes, the years of, or the punishments and what have you, we should not also forget that this whole bit is a very simple and straight one for Amidu. One is going to be based on bribery, corruption, and related matters. it's a straightforward thing, and part of the work is being done. Now, when he comes back into our jurisdiction and he wants to go by our, legal regime, the ultimate punishment will also be dependent on the counts and which of them, or the charges, and which of them the individuals involved will be found guilty. Okay. Now, when it comes to the sentences, you may serve the punishment concurrently or otherwise. So it could be more than the 10.
Okay. These days, there are several dozens of counts that come from the Attorney General's department.
To answer the question,
as if to say that at all costs, something must stick.
Yes.
Because if you are facing charges of 60, in excess of 60, 70 counts, then somebody will say,
it's like, you are being unfair to them. Let's give one example.
I'm being unfair to who the Attorney General.
Yes, because let me mention something. You see, so that viewers will know. Look, viewers, if let's say somebody is said to have stolen 30 Ghana cedis, right, but he didn't steal it at a go. He stole 1 cedi a day for each of the days of the month. If you are going to court, you cannot say stealing 30 as one offense. No, you have 30 charges. Right. So that's the context.
All right. Thank you.
I would want to.
Is it going to be a difficult job for the special prosecutor? And must it end there? Yesterday, Parliament just rejected, an invitation to do a bipartisan inquiry.
Well, I am of the opinion, even though I think I may be in the minority here, that this is not something that should have been left to the SP, the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I think that, one, there should have been an independent inquiry of it, and then whatever decision will come out of the report would be given to the state agencies to prosecute directly. That is my opinion. Because of, well, that is what the main thing I was going to say, but because of this, I'm not saying that the special prosecutor, I'm talking about not the office, the person, does not have the capacity or the competence to. I'm not saying it. But I think that the optics may not be, the perception, in my humble opinion, may not be too favorable at this stage. The reason being that it's not been confirmed, and I stand to be corrected, that he gave a legal opinion on the transaction before. Now, given as an Attorney General, giving a legal opinion, you are not required to discuss the business aspect of the transaction. Now, the question is whether or not it was disclosed to him at the time he gave the opinion that there was an intermediary. And whether if it was disclosed to him, he did his investigations to find out.
But Martin Amidu is not the only officer in that office.
No, the Attorney General.
In fact, he has a deputy.
No, but, well, he signed the opinion. Let me put it that way. That is what has been
said. I'm saying that if he is conflicted, he's not the only one there.
No, okay. So the reason why I said is an office, and not that the office does not have the capacity or the competence, because of the personality involved. We know how strong-willed of a person he is. That is without doubt. And if his office is investigating a matter where there's a possibility of somebody asking that, Mr. Amidu, whilst you were Attorney General, you gave a legal opinion on this. Did you ask A, B, C, D, E questions? If those questions were asked, did you get the answers that you asked for? And if you got the answers, what further due diligence did you do for you to even at that stage say, I see Company D is partly owned by Kofi, and Kofi is related to government official 1. Then there's a potential breach of something. I'm just saying that I don't know the extent or what went into that legal opinion, because the legal opinion would be one of the documents that will come up in the investigations locally. Because you see, it's an international business transaction. So definitely it went to Parliament. And in the documentation that the government at the time, or the majority will present to Parliament, it would definitely contain the legal opinion. Because we've seen defenses that, hey, but the Attorney General gave a legal opinion that we should proceed in other transactions. And if it is Mr. Amidu's signature that was on the legal opinion, it means a document that he has signed will become part of the record of something that he is investigating. Again, it does not affect his capacity, it does not affect his competence, but I think the optics at some point in time, it may come up.
Is it justice not only ought to be seen to be done, but manifest? I think you say.
So I would have preferred that the president would have constituted, I don't want to say a bipartisan, because then that would suggest that it is only MPP and NDC members.
But do they have the capacity to do such an investigation as a parliament? knowing the parliament that
I'm not even interested in parliament investigating this. No. Like the way the president constituted a commission for the Ayawaso West Wagon, because this is something that affects the reputation of Ghana. I heard the Minister of Information saying it's the greatest embarrassment I read somewhere that Ghana has suffered internationally. An independent made up of
anyway.
Well, an independent commission of inquiry made up of civil society groups, qualified persons, to sit dispassionately analyze the evidence and then come out with a report. And it should be live.
All right.
So that everybody will see it. So that at the end of the day, whoever is in government, if they decide to sit on that report, the verdict will be out for the public to see. And whatever the outcome is, it could be handed over to the Attorney General's department for direct prosecution. Now, I would want to speak whether or not it's a difficult tax. And let me just round up. I know you refer to some cases. There's a decision I came across by Justice Appel when he was at the Court of Appeal. And it is Joseph J. versus the Republic. And this 2010-2012 One Ghana Law Report 694. It's involved an official of the GRA who was tasked to investigate, to do a tax audit of a media house. I'll not mention the name, even though it's in the law report. And then he received money. And so the argument was that because he received money, it affected his assessment and he lowered the tax that was payable. And the Court of Appeal said the mere receipt of money by a public officer from someone he had worked for in the course of his official duties was not proof or was not conclusive that corruption had taken place. But this is a Court of Appeal. Yes. And so even though there may be evidence that...
the context is that the person who paid, the company, they flew him out. So he wasn't there to give evidence.
So I'm coming back to to build my point, that it is not enough that there's evidence that money was paid. The judgment from the SADC court and the US court have stated that the purpose of the money was to influence the decision-making process. What I think would determine whether or not there was actually corruption, irrespective of the fact that money had been paid and received, was whether there was a value for money analysis. Because for me, that would be the conclusion of the matter. Because in one of the debates, and I've read the Hansard, Papa Uswan Koma asked the question, who did an independent due diligence for the government of Ghana? And the answer, according to the Hansard, was, it has been done. Up to date, I don't know whether government of Ghana ever did an official due diligence. Because like you rightly said, Airbus is not a charity. If they are paying 3 million euros to secure a contract, definitely that 3 million euros will be part of the cost. And so the government will pay. So if it comes out that, listen, the government of Ghana ordinarily would have paid 5 cedis for this aircraft, or we had a better offer for 2 cedis from Company X, but because of the interest of government official one and his brother, we ended up paying 8 cedis, then of course you would conclude, it would be conclusive that the purpose of the money, and it ended up achieving that purpose, was to get a contract at a price or at a value that ordinarily would not have. Right. So if there was no such due diligence report, then we are in trouble.
You have heard Chairman Saboso suggest that at the time, the questions that they were asking included that they had actually sought independently to find out from the companies involved how much the standard price was. And they were directed to their website. And that they checked.
And they could 35 million.
They checked and they could tell. That's how he comes by the conclusion that they were inflated by each by 10 million at least. He speaks about approvals being advised from the Attorney General, being sought on the 21st of July, or is it June? July. The Finance Minister giving approval on the same day. President Mills giving, his executive approval on the same day. And PPA processes almost everything same day. That's his suggestion.
The optics are not right.
That's his suggestion. So he says that to suggest that you could not have done a due diligence process to come to an arrival of value for money.
Yes, I agree. And if that process, there's evidence that it was not done, then those who were involved are in trouble. I recall, again, I read that during the response to that was that the price that they've seen on their website is the price for the shell of the aircraft, and that the government of Ghana requested for specs. Okay. And so the extra price is the specs. Again, it comes down to the value for money.
We have to wait for
analysis. Exactly. We definitely would. That is what I'm saying. It's not straightforward. That the fact that money has been paid to these people is conclusive evidence that there was corruption. We need to ask further questions.
But those monies would have been for what?
No, that is what I'm saying.
No,
that
but,
if
but here in paragraph 53, the judge says that her findings that they were intended to induce or reward.
You see, she uses the word. No, you see, I'm not saying that what has been done is right.
And the American court says, in fact, the use of this brother is because of the closeness.
It was purposeful.
Yeah, because they said the brother had no background,
official
nothing in that.
Government official one, who was a key decision maker in Ghana purchasing aircraft.
All that I'm saying is that to make the matter straight and without any doubt, there must be either a value for money analysis in support of the prosecution, if we get there, or if it is not there, it will be part of the charge or whatever, the discussion.
So what you're saying is that otherwise the money would have been legitimate commission paid to an intermediary.
Exactly my point. Because you see,
will that commission be unconscionable? Will that commission be unreasonable?
You see, and I'm talking purely from a lawyer's defense angle point of view. The burden on this is a criminal matter is beyond reasonable doubt. Yes. Monies have been paid. The monies were described as commission payments. The investigation.
The judge doesn't accept.
No. I'm coming to the. I'm coming to the judge. I'm talking about between the parties. Of course, they will not write that it is bribe. They will describe it as commission payments. A court in America, France, and England, they have done their investigation and have concluded that they were intended. That is the word. Intended to corrupt a process. They have held on to evidence that have not given to us. And all that I'm saying, that if I was on the defense side, the question that would be asked is that, yes, that was the intention according to your investigation. Show me the value for money analysis.
Okay.
If the value for money analysis is that you should have paid 5 cedis, but you ended up paying 8 cedis, then it is easy to conclude that the only reason why you paid 8 cedis was because 2 out of that extra 3 cedis ended up in the pockets of individuals.
Okay.
That is all that I'm saying.
But one point. Look, that apart. Don't forget, Airbus has a competitor, Boeing. Okay.
Right.
So if you pay so that even if you get the correct value, don't forget that the option could have been, could we have gone to Boeing?
At what value?
So it means that the payment, so the point I'm making is that we don't always have to say there must be a value for money analysis to be able to clinch a corruption deal. No, the point is that I'm selling aircraft, then I see that, okay, in order to induce you to buy, I make a payment. Yes, perhaps if the inducement hadn't been done, you'd have gone to the competitor. So
that is what you
that's
said,
one
perhaps.
way. Yes, so the value for money analysis you're doing is just one way. It doesn't conclude that if the value for money shows that, yes, we got value for money, then it means that there's no corruption. That's what I'm saying. Even if you get value for money, did we check with our competitor? Why did we go sole sourcing? Why did we? You see, all those things then come in. Then the PPA Act comes in.
Where government officials in the public space have been thought of engaging in improper conduct, decided cases. By the end of the day, because of the standard of proof, the Maybe and Johnson case is a perfect example. If you, without me having that hat on as a lawyer, I would say that definitely the government official was involved in whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't think he was found guilty. We can speak of the, may he so rest in peace, Jacob Echebilante's situation. That the Supreme Court even went to the extent, I don't remember if they used the word, it may be immoral or it was improper.
The land acquisition.
The land acquisition. That because of his position, he got it for less than what another. But it's a matter that professionally, again, professionally, for me, it's not good that monies were paid, but whether or not it will lead to a conviction, we would have to prove that, but for the payment of money, we wouldn't have given the contract to Airbus and wouldn't have paid that amount to Airbus. That is all that I'm saying.
There are those who suggest, Justice, that it is also possible Because in this process, as far as we know, it is Airbus employees that have been spoken to. They are the ones who have given their story. And these courts have bought the story. Therefore, it is possible that they could have been telling things that don't exist. Do you buy that argument?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't. You know why? We shouldn't proceed on the premise that it is only Airbus employees who have been spoken to. I think that would be a wrong notion to carry. You see, the DPA was specific to them. But it tells, the judgment also tells us that investigations bordering on the individuals are still ongoing as we speak. I wouldn't be surprised that our official one and his brother or relative, that is number 5, as Bobby will say, may have been spoken to. I wouldn't be surprised.
He's a UK citizen.
Yes, it is a part of a bigger national, international activity. Don't forget that the Americans also said our government official one is known to them. So as far as I'm concerned, that bit about it's only about Airbus stuff and all that, no. Let's also not forget that we are lawyers, so we understand these things properly. Courts are just not run by, in quote, people who have no understanding or knowledge of what is going on. These are well-trained people. These are people who have experience and all that. For a judge to sit on such a high-profile case, you know that this is no mean a judge.
No, but they make mistakes. That's
yes,
why.
they make mistakes.
That's why you can get a victory in the High Court, and then the Court of Appeal will throw it away. You can win at the Court of Appeal, win at the High Court, but Supreme Court will throw you away.
Yes, but in terms of the things that will be brought to them, they wouldn't get them brought.
Okay.
They talk about falsification of documents.
That's right.
Which Airbus has actually accepted that yes, indeed, we falsify certain things just to make it look as if it was not a bribe.
All right.
So clearly, it's something that has been well thought through. They've evaluated a lot of.
Therefore, it's not going to be a difficult job.
I don't think it's going to be a difficult job.
All right.
The only bit is that we'll have to go through our processes. The only other bit, like Bobby was introducing, is that beyond what they will get from the UK, France, American authorities, they may also have to look at some of the things that happened here in Ghana as part of the whole purchase arrangement. That may rope in some other persons beyond one, official one, and intermediary 5.
Okay.
But Bobby, just on your bit, you know, I will want to disagree on this committee for the simple reason that
the Commission for Inquiry.
Yes. In this country, anytime there's been a commission of inquiry, what happens is that at the end of the day, government will issue a certain white paper. And most times it becomes controversial. So I wouldn't want us to go into that realm, so that by the time the work is done, depending on who is sitting on what chair, some white paper will come out that throws the whole country into another discussion because of the controversy around it. The independent prosecutor is supposed to be independent-minded, generally speaking. Of course, we know the AG can come in as and when. So I think that at this point, we should just allow that process to continue.
I see. Interesting, but I wanted to conclude this part on perhaps we're looking at suggestions that are coming up now. Well, if you speak to people within the politics, you know, they'll tell you that, look, these things that we are talking about generally as questions of bribe, 10% matters, look, they are sort of the norm.
Yeah.
All you have to pray is that you are not caught.
Yes, oh, that's it. That's
right?
It. That's why, remember I said it started from Kwame Nkrumah.
Okay.
Yeah, Kwame Nkrumah.
All you have to pray is that you are not caught. So somebody may be caught and some other person may be shouting just because that person has not been caught.
The thief is the one who is caught.
Yeah. Right. Martin, how does that bring in focus part of the campaign that you know has begun about punishing for unexplained wealth?
Excellent. Yes. So this one reinforces that campaign, which is that, look, you know, the Attorney General says that they are amending the law on asset declaration.
Right.
Yes. So we need 2 amendments.
So that the asset you declare will be verified.
Yes.
And then it will be publicized.
Excellent. But that apart, we need 2 amendments. One, that the law for unexplained wealth The Constitution mentions in Article 2863.
That's right.
That if you have wealth, which that's if a person comes into office, 4.
Yeah.
Okay. If a person comes into office and then he cannot explain that he got his wealth from his income, gift, inheritance, and the rest, then it's deemed to be unlawfully gained,
yeah.
right? So let's read it out here just for emphasis.
Okay.
286. Okay. Yes. So 4. Any property or asset acquired by a public officer after the initial declaration required by Clause 1 of this article, and which is not reasonably attributable to income, gift, loan, inheritance, or any other reasonable source, shall be deemed to have been acquired in contravention of this Constitution. Right. Good. So, but this is civil in nature, so we would want to have a specific act that the person be punished. But as usual, as you know my thoughts now, even before the criminal one, the first one is that so far, this particular provision comes in our current dispensation only when somebody dares to report.
Right.
You see, and from the CDD report the last time, December, the Newsfile edition we did in IPS, you could see that many people are scared.
Right.
Many people are scared. So the solution is that, look, the AG, there should be an amendment in the proposed bill that at the end of everybody's tenure of office, you appear straight before the commission. Shraj. Or if we don't want Shraj, we set up, maybe we'll have a permanent commission of inquiry into these matters. But there should be a provision that automatically when the person, the public officer exits, and as to who and who qualify, ministers, chief directors, and there's a whole list of them there in Article 286, right? 2865. You appear before the commission, and then it should be telecast live so that everybody can see. Then you explain the sources of the wealth, the assets you've acquired.
All right, briefly, Bobby, what do you have to say about that? I think in the UK, DS is for 50,000 US, 50,000 pounds. If you are a public officer and you have acquired, you know, wealth that value, and you can't explain the source, you lose it.
Well, it's something that as we are developing as a country, we should look at. The only worry is if it will not be another law that will be used by politicians against other politicians, or would be used, you know, against
we got a lot of cases when the GRG commission.
That is what I'm saying. That it's definitely, and I think the introduction of the tax identification number. My only worry is the implementation.
All right.
Because I recall that they said that, for example, if you are going to register a land at the Lands Commission, you need your tax identification number to be included. If you are going to register a vehicle in your name at the DVLA, they will, so that they can synchronize the system and check. But I have done some of these things in my professional life, and they never requested for them. So we may say it, but the system of implementing it is what may leave room for political machinations to be used as a tool.
All right. Yes, you want a minute on that? Is it useful? We need something like that.
Well, we may have to think about it because we are looking at a bigger
Because
context.
if we can't catch you taking it, we should get you to explain where you got the money.
I mean, you know, in the UK, for instance, the first victim, the woman, Zamira,
Wife of,
a former chairman of a state bank, even though it was not her person, once her husband was prosecuted, the property that was in her name, the UK government now deems that that property within Nicebridge, it's one that falls squarely under the unexplained wealth order. So they even looked at her expenditure and all that. So clearly, these are things that we can look at, probably incorporating them one way or the other, but not forgetting the caveat that Bobby brought up, that if it does not end up being a tool that will be used to witch hunt others.
Okay. So like you guys said, it's only a matter of time. We should wait for a special prosecutor, and we may get the opportunity of seeing the emails that were circulated among these people. But I want to read just about 2-3 highlights of the development from the US PDA for you. And they said that, in fact, that is in paragraph 134, that in fact, Airbus or its vendors had paid, offered, or agreed to pay political contributions, fees or commissions in connection with these sales in the amount of at least 3.5, in excess of 3.5 million euros. Then another paragraph that between 2009 and 2016, individual 1, a citizen of Ghana, was a high elected government official in Ghana. A high elected government official in Ghana. MPs are not government officials, right? I think you can take MPs out. Elected government officials. MPs are elected public officers. They are not elected government officials. Government official in Ghana during the relevant time. Beginning in or around 2009, a few months after Individual 1 took office, Individual 1 was in direct and repeated contact with senior Airbus executives from both the Defense and Space Division and SMO International about Airbus sales campaigns. Individual 1, remember Individual 1 is Government Official 1 in the UK judgment, was influential in having the government of Ghana approve aircraft purchases, and Individual 1 contacted Airbus senior executives during the government approval process. In 2011, during Individual 1's time in office, the Ghanaian Parliament approved the purchase of 2 C-295 aircrafts. That's where I'll end part of my summary that I tried to do. We will be right back, and when we come, we will look for excavators. There's been some controversy about excavators, but what we know is that as early as August 2018, the Vanguard team had already seized as many as over 600 excavators. So if somebody tells you that there has not been any, 500 excavators or anything, take it with a pinch of salt. We'll be right back.